In 1991, Sega released one of my favorite Master System and Game Gear titles, Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. It was such a great playing platformer that looked and sounded pretty impressive as well. I always sort of saw this game as Sega's Mario, much more so than Alex Kidd in the later released Sonic titles. It proved so popular that Sega decided to do another one in-house, this time by Sega CS. They wrapped up development and released it in early 1993 in Japan for the Game Gear, and in summer of that year for the Master System. Because this was later in the life of the Master System, it would only see availability in PAL territories, Brazil, and Korea. Fortunately, it did make its way to the US via the Game Gear. In this episode, we will be taking a look at Land of Illusion, and see if it's a worthy sequel to the epic original. The core gameplay of Land of Illusion is identical to its forebearer. The two-button gameplay is simple and easy to come to terms with. One button picks things up and throws them, while the other one jumps. That's it. As before, Mickey also brings his dreaded ass bounce of doom along, making quick work of enemies like snakes, ghosts, and spiders. You can also pick up and throw rocks at bad guys for a little projectile fun. Stage design is reminiscent of Castle as well, with plenty of pits to die in, horizontal and vertically scrolling levels, as well as the odd item that must be picked up and used at opportune times. Land doesn't just rest on the great design of the first entirely, however, as it also adds a fair bit of new things for you to look forward to. As you gain access to new areas and free your friends, you get items that give Mickey special abilities like climbing up walls, making himself tiny, and walking on clouds. You will need all these things to make it to the final stage. Also new is a heavy reliance on puzzle elements within the stages. Some areas are indeed straight shot to the end affairs, but you also get quite a bit of trickery that challenges your brain power a bit. The Super Mario World style map is also prone to backtracking to open up new paths within the stages. You'll replay some areas multiple times to find new secrets and items thanks to your new abilities, an almost Metroid-like touch. This makes Land of Illusion feel quite a bit longer than Castle, and more challenging as well. The great storyboards are back too, and you'll want to pay attention to them because they drop clues as to where you must go and what you're looking for. To tell you the truth, it feels almost as if Nintendo themselves developed it, and despite my channel's namesake, that's actually a compliment. The 8-bit Castle of Illusion looked exceptional for the time it was released. The bright colors and sprites were grade A, and Sega really nailed the Disney art design. Land of Illusion continues that trend with another great showing. It doesn't try anything groundbreaking, but since its inspiration was so damn nice to begin with, it really didn't have to. For what it's worth, there is a fair bit of variety here beyond what we saw in Castle. Mickey will need to deal with lakes, deserts, castles, beanstalks, and a few other locations in his travels. In typical Sega fashion, they animated everything here nearly as well as many of the 16-bit titles you'd see at the time. Mickey's walking, throwing, jumping, and standing still animations all look the part, as do the enemies. We don't get a lot in the way of neat tricks like parallax scrolling, but for the then 7-year-old 8-bit hardware, you had to respect the hell out of it. I find doing the sound section for Sega Master System games a bit tough. The hard-edged PSG the system is known for could really be overbearing to some ears, while other people loved it. I find myself in the middle, appreciating it in terms of its rhythm and flow, but needing to turn the volume down a bit because it's so overpowering. Land of Illusion has its tunes tailored well for each level, and I'll let you have a listen to decide whether you'll be pumping up the volume or taking it down a notch or two. It's actually quite difficult to pick apart Land of Illusion and critique it. It's so well made, I dare say it's a better game than Castle all the way around. The gameplay is deeper and more varied. The addition of items to give Mickey extra gameplay options is a real treat. The developers didn't just use those abilities as a one-trick pony either. Many of the later levels will use these newfound powers many times while you explore the area. They become as integral to the overall gameplay as jumping and grabbing items. In fact, Sega built sections of some of the levels entirely around them, making you master their timing and even making you think a bit on how to use them in new ways. It really was a step up from Castle because of this, and easily one of the better platformers to grace Sega's 8-bit hardware. As you'd expect, it does have some weaknesses. While the later levels do offer some challenge, you'll blow through the early game with no problems at all. Like Castle, you can find extra life containers hidden throughout the game, giving you the convenience of taking much more damage. Once you can take 5 hits, things become a lot easier. There are also checkpoints here that help you out upon a death. I really wish that Sega had introduced more aggressive enemies and more robust boss encounters to level the playfield somewhat. I mean seriously, some of these end of stage fights are so easy, you could almost beat these guys blindfolded. The engine is also under strain here from time to time. Slowdown crops up in the most peculiar of places, sometimes when only 2 or 3 things are on the screen. It's never a real problem as far as making things harder, but you'll feel it enough to utter a WTF from time to time. On the plus side, it's a great game to play with your kids, thanks to the cutesy theme and tolerable difficulty level. As I previously mentioned, this also had a Game Gear version. As you'd guess, the visuals are zoomed in heavily, making the play area seem much more cramped. Sometimes this translates to enemies seemingly popping out of nowhere for cheap hits, but you do get used to it. The gameplay is also slightly different in the Game Gear release. While you do need to push the action button while jumping to do Mickey's butt bounce in the Master System version, you need to hit jump twice to do it on the Game Gear. No big deal, but interesting Sega chose to change it. Outside of a few visual touches being altered here and there, it's primarily the same game with most of the same positives and negatives. Of course, because this one can be played anywhere and was released in every major region, it does have a huge advantage in accessibility. So, do we have a worthy sequel and worthy successor to the brilliant Castle of Illusion? We sure do. It hits all the same positive notes of the first, while offering enough new to hold your attention. It still looks great and of course retains that killer gameplay. When it comes to sheer fun factor, it ranks high up there as a Master System and Game Gear classic. It really makes me wonder why Sega didn't do a Genesis version similar to this one. I mean, Castle of Illusion was a great game there too, and a 16-bit sequel with an overworld map and Metroid-style power-ups and backtracking could have made for a memorable trip. I would have taken that over Fantasia any day of the week. We did get World of Illusion at least, which was a really fine game in its own right. With Land of Illusion here turning out so strong, Sega continued the trend of 8-bit Disney titles all the way to 1995 with Legend of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. We'll have to take a look at that one someday soon, but for now, if you want some good old-fashioned Sega platforming, Land of Illusion definitely deserves a look. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.